Hi and welcome back everybody. Today we are actually going to watch a game trailer for the game Assassin's Creed Valhalla. For the gamers out there, you know probably the game series Assassin's Creed. It's an open world game where you can go around, watch buildings and whatever. And the game is actually historically pretty accurate, most of them. Of course, you cannot be 100% accurate in every game and so on. But for me, it's kind of interesting how video games actually convert or bring in more people to enjoy and love history and also to discover something new. So, although I'm interested in how the game is, and probably I'm going to buy it, we can see by the title Valhalla that it's going to be something about the Vikings. And the topic on Vikings is something that I really love and enjoy, especially the Nordic mythology and Odin and Thor and everything and Ragnarök and so on. But we are going to analyze the trailer through a historical perspective, Ubisoft, and actually Blizzard. Now, the gaming nerd speaking from me, they always make good trailers. I didn't saw the trailer, but I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So let's just jump in.
They are heartless.
The Nordic Light. Wonderful, wonderful.
Godless.
Odin. That's probably Odin because Odin is always depicted as a man with a long beard. And he is the main god in the Nordic mythology. And he is the god of wisdom, of death, and everything. And he's always the one who is most who had the most respect in the Nordic cultures.
Barbarians.
Some war paint. Beautiful. The Scandinavians, the geography of Scandinavia is really interesting because they have those, they call it fjords. I'm not sure if it's the same thing in English, but it's like the most of the settlements from the Vikings were inside of those fjords, because fjords are surrounded by three sides with land, so they would put in the settlements like inside of the fjords so they could defend them more easily and see if the enemy is coming with long boats and so on. Beautiful. Of course, Vikings known for their longboats. They could travel with them to England and Iceland, and this is... Let's see. This is probably England.
They murder and kill blindly.
Of course, Vikings are known for raids, especially in England, but they went also into Russia, and as far as I know, most of the slaves that they brought back to the Scandinavian territories were slaves from Russia, from today's Russia. And they went also, I was one time in Istanbul, today's Istanbul, and they were also in the Mediterranean and also in Hagia Sophia. And I saw some little ruins inside of Hagia Sophia, where some of the Vikings who was there just how is it said, like scribbled his name into a wall. So it's kind of interesting. Look it up.
They scar the lands of England.
Yeah, England.
Lands they will never defend, never love. The time has come to speak to them in a language they will understand.
War. Wait. I'm interested who that king.
Speak to them in a language they will understand.
Ah! Alfred. Alfred the Great. So the timeline is going to be somewhere around the 9th century, when the Danes invaded England, and there was a big back and forth with King Alfred the Great, who had some victories, had some defeats, and so on. But actually, today's eastern parts of England, if you can imagine the islands, fell under the Danes, and then a lot of other Scandinavian, like Norwegians and so on, came and joined the Danes. And he was actually also famous or at that time, the Dane law. I think it's called the Dane law, where the Danish law was actually, in that part of eastern England today, was actually dominant upon the Anglo-Saxon law. So, wow, very interesting. War.
Oh, somebody tell me. Answer if you can.
Longbow.
Oh, somebody tell me.
Shield!
What is the soul of
Whoa. Of course, the Vikings with their axes. The interesting thing with England back then, if you saw it, like during the battles now. Just a second. Does this look like Roman soldiers to you? Kinda, or? That's because Britain or the British Islands were subjugated by the Romans during the Roman Empire, and then the Anglo-Saxons and so on, they actually continued to use Roman arms and so on. That's why you, at that time, the depictions of that time's England, let's call it that way, or British armies, you can see a lot of similarities between like Roman warriors and Anglo-Saxon warriors back then. also the interesting thing about the Nordic mythology, they were very uh, war or warrior orientated. So the saying goes that, like with the mythology, with their religion, that they had like that I think half of the most brave or warriors that fought in a battlefield and that fell on a battlefield would be taken by Valkyries into Valhalla. So the great hall of warriors where Odin uh, presides, and they would train there, drink there, fight there, and so on, and then they would prepare for Ragnarök, which is the end of the world where all the gods would fight each other, like the evil ones and the good ones, and then the world would end. So they were pretty motivated as warriors to give their best on a battlefield. And actually, an interesting thing with the Vikings is also that although they had tactical retreats, but they would not always, but almost always fight like till the last man. Very interesting. Odin.
Odin is with us!
Odin! Nope. There we have the connections with Assassin's Creed and the things. So people are going to probably play as Vikings, but the Anglo-Saxons.
What is the soul of man?
Okay, I definitely know which game I'm going to play next. Okay, so wow, what a trailer. If you want the original trailer without my interruptions and so on, I'm gonna put a link in the description below. And something else, you know the series probably Vikings also. It's a great series because it goes into depth with the culture and the rituals and the gods and everything, not just fighting. So you can check that series out. The thing I wanted to point out also is the female warriors in the Viking culture. They weren't actually that common. The women would come with the men on the raids, but predominantly the Vikings knew like they had a gender structured society where women were mostly keeping up the housework and the farms and so on, and men would go on raids, and they actually didn't have much say in like the law and the governance and so on. But they would actually also sometimes join the men on the raids, but they would be in the backlines and trying to colonize the territory where the Vikings went, build up farms, houses, and also try to assimilate the new slaves that men would bring in, and they would also try to, like produce food for the warriors to go more, like to push out more the front line. But they were actually very respected in the society, because they were seen as the ones who give birth to new Vikings, to new warriors. And also in the mythology, you can see that I don't know, 1/3 or something like that of the gods is also female, and also the Valkyries, they are also female. So they had respect for women more than in the rest more than in rest of Europe. But as Christianity also moved to Scandinavia, yeah, that got kind of messed up. And the women could also get divorced, and they could also own land if the man dies. But very interesting from a historical point of view, the Vikings and the Nordic mythology. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how video games, actually bring people to love history and to enjoy history. So I'm pretty thrilled with the new Assassin's Creed. So yeah, see ya.